place for you. No need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word itself approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken. If you need truth, this is the place for you. No need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word itself approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken.
And shalom to each and every one of you. We're glad to have you with us today. Pray that you're doing well and that life is giving you what you need today. I'm sorry about the noise in the background, but we got that figured out. Well, this is yours truly, Apostle V.W. Jones, right here on what is known as the Proceeding Word. If you have the time today, why don't you share this page with someone? More importantly, if you're coming in on YouTube, we're going to ask you to hit the subscribe button at the top, please, whether you're in archive or following with us live. And if you're on Facebook, would you please do us a grand favor and hit the heart page or on the page, hit the heart on the page, and then hit the heart on the broadcast and let us know where you're viewing from. We just want to know. Don't give us your address, but your country, your state, your continent. It's fine. We just want to make sure we know where you're coming in from. For those of you that are listening in today, it's going to be an interesting program. It's going to be short. It's going to be sweet. It's going to be impactful. And if you are a parent or if you are a pastor, you need to be on this broadcast today. So those of you that are with me on our streams of Facebook, YouTube, Clubhouse, I want you to ping in a pastor. Yeah, it's going to be that way today. Ping in a supposed leader. Ping in a father or a mother who is struggling. And I want you to really ping in the mothers and the fathers who are like, children then left the house. Ping them in too. All right. So this should be very interesting. And as we like to know, good for the heart and the soul. We want to make sure you get an understanding today about some things that we do and we say, and we'll get right into that. So the truth on raising children, both naturally and within the church, kingdom style. Well, that's all we're about here is the kingdom of Elohim, and we're equipping all citizens of the kingdom on how to live practically, as his word says, in this world, his word made, even though we turn our back on the word that made us. So welcome to the Proceeding Word. As you know, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. And a quick announcement. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m.-ish Eastern Standard Time, we are here to talk about those types of practicalities and all that we do and all that we say. So we're hoping that one day you'll be able to join in with us, or many days you can join with us and tune in and learn quite a bit about what it means to do certain things within the religion of Christianity and do them rightly within the kingdom of Elohim, because that's what we're really pushing for, right? And then don't forget, every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do have our Bible studies. That's on the Darash Kingdom Ministries Network. Those of you on Clubhouse, you would have to go to Darash Kingdom Ministries, ask to be invited into that house, and then we will let you into that house. Then on Thursdays, we do what is known every Thursday at 7 p.m. Y'all should have been here last night for the 7 p.m. Y'all wasn't here? Okay. So come back next week. You're welcome here for the Bible Book Club. It's going to be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on both Clubhouse and Facebook, usually, and YouTube. So if you're there for that, you'll enjoy what goes on with that. Remembering we're also Sabbath keepers here in this ministry. So every Friday at sundown till Saturday at sundown, some of you are already in your Sabbath. Some of us are about to enter into our Sabbaths. And during those 24 hours of Sabbath keeping, we also will be going live for studies for benefiting everybody, studying together, typically around Fridays at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, sometimes Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But it's a good study. You'll be able to keep and comply with Sabbath if you if you join us in those hours. We're also here on Sundays, our Peacock service, the morrow after Sabbath service. Every Sunday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're here for what we do. And all we do is keep the Torah loading in your heart and in your life so you might know quite a few things. Remembering, because the season we're in, can I get about 5 people to come off microphone? 5 people to come off microphone and say, I declare Pesach. I proclaim Pesach. Come on, give it to me. It's a wonderful thing to do, to embrace, to understand, and to learn. And so we got a lot going on. I want y'all to remember, please, if you got a pastor or friend that's on Clubhouse and or on YouTube or Facebook, go ahead and invite them in today because it's going to be important. Remember these days, because coming up on April the 21st is the actual first, what's supposed to be Good Friday. It's going to be Pesach, the day our Savior died. And then you have he's also put in the grave on that day. Then you have the 15th, which is Hakat Matzah. That'll be on the 22nd of April, And then on Nisan 16, the 23rd of April is the resurrection of our Savior. That's the actual day of resurrection, according to Torah calendar, correlating with the Gregorian calendar. And then on the 28th, we end the season of Pesach and the last day of Hakat Matzah with a holy convocation. So we gather together for special services on the 21st of April, the 22nd of April, the 23rd of April, and the 28th of April, all in their respective times, as Yahweh has sanctioned, as the instructions of our Bible say we are to do. So hope you'll join us for that. But it is really only for those who are on the know and in the know, I should say. So if you're just coming to be a wallflower, you're welcome, but don't come to something you don't plan to participate in, because then it's just a waste of your time. And then you'll find yourself judgmental and antagonistic. The people that will be in those programs will be there because they live the life. We live that life. But we're welcoming anyone who wants to learn more about that life and how that life is done, because of what the writ says it should be and how it works. It is a life-changing experience. I promise you, you will never be the same. But you can't come just trying to, say, well, let me go see if I'm gonna feel something different. No, you won't. I promise you, you won't feel anything. And for those of us who live it, we don't feel anything. We experience better after the fact. And so many people think, oh, I'm going to feel God in the service. You may, but more than likely, you're going to experience his promise and provender by your compliance, and it'll manifest in the days to come. That's the whole process of being, in his word, baraked. Okay, so listen, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. And we got a particular special program for you guys today. It is actually the truth on raising children, both naturally and within the church. And I'm hoping that you all would find something to take away from this with power and evidence by what his word says. Okay, so let's get right into this with a word of prayer. Father, we come before you in the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach. You are holy, you are righteous, you are our King and our Savior. We repent for any and all sins, Father, if we've done anything wrong. We right now, because you let us live through it, we are here breathing today. We take this moment to give you our life. We give you our members, we give you our tongue, we give you our hands, we give you our feet, we give you our body, we give you our mind, and we ask you to take it, reconstruct it, reform it from the actual deforming of this world we've been participating in and trying to fit into and trying to be accepted in. We come back to you. Man doesn't live by bread alone. We live by your word. Every word that proceeded out of your mouth is what created the heavens and the earth and all that therein dwells, and ourselves. So we come to you saying, forgive us for thinking we could do this on our own because we knew something, or we got educated on something, or we went to school and got a degree in something. Forgive us for thinking we know better than you because we got information and we got some knowledge. Your wisdom far exceeds anything we could ever understand. Your omniscience in the Greek is so far better than anything we could know and understand. You're Shama, you're everything all over at the same time, and we love you, adore you, and need you. So we repent for walking this world without you, and we come back to you in this moment by the blood to cleanse us the blood of Pesach, the blood of the cross of Calvary, and by the finished work of that actual feast, where you caused him to be in the belly of the earth for 3 days, and you rose him as you said, and now he sits in your right hand, making intercession for the rest of us human beings on this planet who think our word, our will should be above your will. So right now we repent. We give you our thoughts. We give you our mind. We give you our hands. We give you our hope. And we trust in you now that we might live off of your word and move in that very power and prowess that you have rendered us that way. So today, be glorified in all things done and spoken. Those that have entered into their Shabbat, we speak Shabbat Shalom to them. We're asking you to let your Shabbat Shalom rest on them, in them, through them, for the total restoration of their bodies, minds, and souls. Give us now this day a word that we can walk practically better for your kingdom representation in the earth, in the mighty name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Savior, our soon coming King. Amen. All right, everybody. I know some of y'all like my prayers are too long. Like, oh man, he prayed too long. But if you listen to him, I promise you they'll bless your life and your soul. Let's get into something very important today. Again, the program is going to be called The Truth on Raising Children, both natural and within the church. Basically meaning as home and spiritual, because parents, particularly the way we have churches set up, are what you mimic in the church when you have pastors and so-called leaders of the church, right? Because you're parenting or you're shepherding the sheep. Now, what is the conflict or what is the similarity that causes this interesting conflict of demonstration that we need to talk about? Well, let's get into it. So one of the things that's very true, the truth on raising children, kingdom style, is that we don't know what the responsibilities of raising our children really is. So what is your responsibility to raising those Elohim gave you responsibility for in the earth? You know, there's this nasty quote out there that says he left the 99 to go get the one. And many pastors believe that. That's a spiritual side, church side of this that we're going to talk about. We're going to break it down so you can understand it. And then there's also the issue of, we say that, hey, your family, your blood is thicker than water. So let's look at some of these things that have us, as it were, tethered in our natural life, trying to appease the traditions of our cultures and our ethnicities that have not necessarily rooted themselves in the word of Elohim, but have rooted themselves in the religions about Elohim. Let's talk about some real practical stuff today. It's going to hurt some of y'all, but I promise you it's going to deliver all of you. Okay, all us, not just you, me too. I need this as much as I'm sharing it with you. I need it as much as you do. I got to first be partaker of this fruit in order to understand it. And I dare say sell it, because I refuse to sell it, but it is the truth. Let's look at this. What, in fact, is the truth on raising our children? Now, Proverbs chapter number 20. Proverbs, I said 22. Let me go to Proverbs right now. I'm going to put my Bible on the screen for you guys. In the book of Proverbs, I want y'all to see this. It's very important. In the book of Proverbs, chapter number 22, verse 6, everybody talks about this. Proverbs 22, 6. This is the emphasis of what we're talking about. Proverbs 22, 6 goes on to make this statement. Here's the Bible put it on screen for you guys right now. Sorry, technology is beautiful and sometimes a pain. Here we go. Proverbs chapter number 22. Let's go to verse number 6. Now, listen to what the Bible says. Listen to what Solomon says, who propagates Torah in all of his actions for the majority of his life. He says, train up a child in the way the child should go. And when the child is old, the child will not depart from it. All right. Now, as you also know, there are other passages of the writ which tell us and explain to us that we are to raise our children and be able to commend them to the ways of Elohim and What we have failed to do in many instances is realize what we are to do as parents outside of our church understanding of things. I'm going to take you now. We took you to Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Train up your child in the way that they should go, that when they get old, they will not depart from it. I'm going to say it again and listen. Don't just quote it. Train up a child in the way that they should go, that when they get older, they will not depart from it. That's your responsibility. I'm going to go to something in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3, that many of us need to pay attention to. Because they're going to be a very clear, inextricable connection here. Chapter 6 of Ephesians. I'm going to put my Bible on the screen so you can read it. There you go. Watch this. Look at the passage. Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 1. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. Now, for those of you who know the key to Elohim, that word Lord is capital L, small O-R-D. And that word Lord comes out of the key to Elohim. And the key to Elohim is very clear. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. When you see the key to Elohim, you see the word Lord, right? Elohim consists of three distinct personages. These attributes are three, yet they are one. First one is Yahweh, and you see next to Yahweh, it says capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, and that means God the Father in English, right? And it means that is the thought process of the Elohim. Then you have the second attribute beneath that. That is the Adonai. And then that one says capital L, lowercase O-R-D. And that references God the Son, right? Now, God the Son is the enunciator of the thoughts of Yahweh, the planner. However, he also equates to being known as the Word, i.e. the Torah, right? And so the third attribute is Ruach HaKodesh, that's the Holy Spirit. But let's focus on the second attribute, that's Adonai, capital L, small O-R-D. So why do I bring that up to you? Because that capital L, small O-R-D means the Word, okay? So when Paul is writing in Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 1, he says, children, obey your parents in the word. Y'all thought it meant children, obey your parents in Jesus. That's not what it meant. He said, children, obey your parents in and according to the word, for this is right. Here is what he does. He then gives you the actual Torah, the actual commandment. One of the first 10, actually. He says, children, honor your father, honor your mother, which, by the way, is the first commandment, the first mitzvah, the first commandment of the Torah that comes with a promise. Verse 3, so that it may be well with you, that you may live long on the earth. Then he gives an admonishment I think is worthy of reading when he says here in the passage, I hope y'all guys are catching this because it's very important, very significant stuff. But in verse number 4, he goes on to say, and you fathers, and you fathers, and you fathers. I love this part. And you fathers, look at what it says. And you fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but raise your children up, bring your children up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Now, remember, the admonishment for the word Lord here is according to the key to Elohim. The second attribute of Elohim is Adonai. Capital L, small O-R-D, meaning God the Son. He is the enunciator of thought of Yahweh, our Elohim, meaning he is the word of Elohim. So when he makes this statement to the children, to the Ephesians, he says, listen, you guys, raise your children up in the fear and admonition of the word. Somebody say, I was this year old when I learned that.
I was this year old. I was this year old when I learned that.
So I want you to really understand this because it's significant. And many people go on and tout this and quote this and act like they really understand this. And they're like, oh, raise them up in the fear of Jesus. I love Yeshua. You don't make people fear Yeshua. You cause them to reverence what Yeshua did, because he did what the word said do. In the beginning was the word. The word was with Elohim, because the word was Elohim. And the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and full of truth. This is extremely significant for us to understand why Paul writes this way. Now, what are we talking about? What is the truth on raising children, both naturally in a family and in church, spiritually? How do you do that according to the kingdom of Elohim? That's the question. Here is what I want y'all to get. Here is the thing. When you've heard Proverbs, Solomon, the wisest man on the planet, barring Yeshua, and he tells you, train up your children in the way they should go. Paul admonishes us to do the same thing. So now you have a Old Testament witness and a New Testament witness. To those of you who prefer the Hebrew, you have a witness in the Tanakh and you have a witness in the Brit Hadassa. That all comes from a foundational commandment in the Torah. So when Elohim gave that first commandment, you can find this commandment in Exodus chapter number 20. Just go down there and read it. It's right there. You can read it. Exodus 20 verses 1 through 5, 1 through 10, but it's right there. He says, honor your father and your mother, child. And then he goes on to let you know why you want to do that, because it's the first commandment of Elohim that has a promise connected to it. So honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long and your life may go well during the days that you are on the earth. That is the commandment. Now, parents, you have a job too. Paul brings the whole spectrum. Paul then lets you know in verse number 4, he says, and you fathers, because you're the heads of your homes, these are your children, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring your children up in the nurture and in the admonition of the Lord. Remember what the Lord means. Can anybody tell me what the word Lord here means? Capital L, small O-R-D. What are we bringing up our children in the fear and admonition of?
Veronica.
Go ahead, Veronica.
The word.
It is the word. And what is the word? Does anybody know what the word is when we talk about Elohim, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, God the Word? What is the word? Does anybody know?
Yeah.
Say your name. Come on.
Danielle.
Danielle, go.
Adonai.
The word is Adonai. But what is it practically to us? I know you know this answer. What is the word of Elohim? What's the Hebrew name for it?
That's
Hey, I knew you had it. You like, I knew that answer. Torah. That's right. So what is Paul saying? If we read this properly now, understanding the Greek intentions, to try and duplicate what Paul is saying in the Hebrew, Paul simply says, children, obey your parents. Look at this while we read it again. Verse 1, children, we're in Ephesians 6:1. Children, obey your parents in the word, according to the word. Because the word is right. Is not the Torah right? It's different, don't it? I know it makes you sit there and stumble and stutter like, you know what? I didn't look at it that way. Exactly. Then he says, verse 2, honor your father and mother, because it's the first commandment with promise. Well, where do you get the commandments from? The word. What is the word? Danielle, what's the word, Danielle? Come on, talk to me, Danielle. What's the word?
the Torah.
The Torah. So if he says it's the first commandment, which comes from the word, which is the Lord, then therefore it's the first commandment, the first mitzvah, the first charge, the first commandment with promise. Now, if y'all don't believe that the Torah and the word and the Lord are all the same, then I want y'all to stop singing that song, a charge to keep I have, and a God to glorify. Because you don't have a charge unless you have an instruction. And the instructions for the faith of he who hung on the cross come from Torah. And he who hung on the cross made it very clear. I did not come to destroy the Torah, nor the prophets who propagated the Torah. I came to show you how to live the Torah. So even he obeyed and kept the charge. He sung the song in his life, a charge to keep I have. I'm going to make it to that cross according to Pesach, according to Torah. I'm going to make it. I'm going to honor my father and my mother, that my days may be long upon this land that Yahweh our Elohim gives me. And so Messiah, he who hung on that cross, obeyed the Torah, that charge to keep he had. The God he had to glorify. And when he fulfilled what the Torah said, he was glorified by the Father. We know that, and it's evidence in our faith, that he sits in the right hand of the Father right now, making intercession for us, other humans who have the choice to serve and keep his instructions. So I want to get that part out there because that's the foundation for how you raise your children, how you raise your congregants in your organization that wants people to know the God of our salvation. So now look at this, and we're going to get right into this in a streamline. Some of y'all say, man, you take too much time setting it up. You can't even begin to walk without that foundation being set. The Lord here in Ephesians, capital L, small R-D, references the word of Elohim. The word of Elohim is what you call in the Trinity doctrines and the triune doctrines and the Unitarian and all that stuff. But the Lord is God the Son. God the Son is his word. God the Father is Yahweh, the planner. That's why he said, I know my plans concerning you. So Adonai speaks from the mind of Yahweh. He is the articulator of what is engineered in the Yahweh attribute of Elohim. They're not three different people. It's Elohim. He is both thought producer, articulator, and performer of his own word. Just like you, just like me, I am VW. I think to make a sandwich. I speak, I'm going to make a sandwich. And once I speak it, I'm going to go make that sandwich. I am not three different people. This is not an issue of multiple personalities. This is attributes of one. Okay, so in Elohim, who we are made like and in the image of, when we talk about Elohim, God Father, God Son, God Holy Spirit, don't get afraid or freak out when you hear someone help you understand in the Hebrew, God Father means Yahweh. God Son means Adonai. God Holy Spirit means Ruach HaKodesh. That's the actual language that you learn this from. So now when you talk about Adonai, Adonai is the articulator of the thoughts of Yahweh. Let me put it to you this way. God the Son is the articulator of God the Father's thoughts. And so the articulation is word. That's what we call language. Word makes a sentence. Sentences makes paragraphs. Paragraphs make articles, edicts, and or governances. So you cannot disconnect that from your mind intellectually because you're so spiritual that you're going to hear God whisper to you in your sleep like an aroma at the night and tell you what to do. He left it in his word. I've already told you what to do. Yeshua came to show you what to do. And the only way he showed you what to do was from the word I gave Moshe that the people were not keeping. So I sent Messiah in, I sent Adonai. I sent the word in sin-filled flesh to show you that in your flesh, you can still live my instructions and glorify me. Thus your song, a charge to keep I have, and the God of Elohim to satisfy. You got to get that. And so when you understand that, now let's talk about what that means in our communities that are supposed to be propagating and promulgating the idea of salvation. Now, the charge is to obey and honor your father and your mother. children. The actual function of the parents is to not provoke your children to wrath where they don't want to hear a word you got to say. But father, notice it said father, didn't say mom. Father, because mom is supposed to be following dad. Dad is supposed to be honoring mom. Dad is supposed to be submitting to mom. Mom is supposed to be submitting to dad. But the image is Adam. So when he says, father of this offspring, do not cause them and provoke them to wrath, but raise them in the reverence and the admonition, admonishing them, cultivating them in the instructions of the word. But when you read it in the Greek, transferred to the English, it sounds like they're telling you something different, but it means raise them in the fear and admonition of the word. This is right. If you don't believe me, go back to King David in Psalms chapter 19 when he told y'all very clearly, the word of Elohim is pure, lightening the eyes. It is right. That's what the word is. Go read Psalms 19. It's right there. Now, when the mother and the father, i.e. the father, is raising a child that Elohim has chosen to bring through his loins, chosen to place in his spouse's womb and bring forth one of Elohim's humans, that child does not belong to the conduit. The parenthood is the conduit. And so what's happening right now, because we're so, Maslow's hierarchy of needs plays into this philosophically and psychologically, but you got to understand the parenthood is a conduit for human life. The parenthood is a conduit for human life. And so the human belongs to Elohim, not the conduit. So for the conduit to turn around after something has passed through it and say, I was your portal into this world, and if you don't obey me, I'm going to take you out of this world. The conduit is out of order. I'm just talking to you about the truth on raising children, kingdom style, because the child doesn't belong to you, mom, dad. The child belongs to Elohim. Our responsibility as a conduit is to make sure we keep that new human growing upright in the reverence of he who made him. Because if we don't remind the child and admonish the child of the word of Elohim, then the child will be left to his own thinking, left to her own thinking. And the worst thing, my dear fathers, you can have, my dear fathers and husbands, is a daughter or you in a skirt. When you don't have your right mind. You are running around in this world in the knowledge of your understanding, doing what you think you can do. Somebody need to go ahead and make sure we clear this up. But just because you can do it, don't mean you should do it. And when you just understand that concept and you're like, well, I can do it, don't mean you should. And so to have you 2.0 walking around in the earth thinking like you, that ain't a good thing. Unless you're admonishing what came through you, mom and dad, as a team, admonishing this male seed, this female daughter in the reverence of its creator, so that when you are gone, because you don't know when that's going to happen, they have their feet grounded in purpose. You are not their sufficiency. You are a tool that doles out the sufficiency, because Elohim will provide the father and the mother. Watch this. Can I bless your life with this? Can I blow somebody's mind with this right here? I promise you it's going to be quick. Can I do it? I need permission though.
Yes, sir. 1
Peter 3:7. I'm going to show y'all something. This is a sidebar, but it's relevant, very relevant. Won't take us off course. Somebody shout sidebar for me. I need a shout. I haven't had a sidebar shout in a minute. Somebody say sidebar. Type it in if you want to. Follow me. Come on over here. Remember what I taught y'all, because when he references father, it is assumed based on how children are to be brought into this world on the norm by both mother and father, right? Two men can't bring a child into the earth. just put that out there. Two women can't bring a child into the earth. So it's always been man and woman that procreate and then reproduce, right? So that's the reproduction process. So the father and the mother are supposed to be assumedly together, right? The woman is submitting to the man, meaning she submits her ideas whenever he gets a vision, but the vision he gets, she was with him in the presence of Elohim when he got it. So when they're together, getting this impression from the father, right? She is like, hey, I got an idea to get that done. So then she comes up with ideas. The man is like, okay, thinking through. She presents back to him. She submits back to him her multiplicity of ideas around that one vision. Then man is given the permission to choose which of those visions, those resources she came up with to produce the vision by. That's the true concept of submission one to another. Wives, submit to your husband. It does not mean bow down your head and act like that girl from the movie, Harlem Nights. Is it Harlem Nights? Coming to America, where the queen is act like an Iraq. That's not submittance. That's foolishness. You need mental help. Go get it. So submittance means that you are submitting your resource to your visionaire, and you choose if this person is capable of being your visionaire. So before you say I do, that man and you, through proper counseling, before you get married, you are knowing that this person knows how to hear from the Father. He lets me hear from the Father with him. When he prays, we pray, and therefore I know he's hearing from the Father when I go all out to bring this vision to pass. He ain't just coming to me with some janky ideal he picked up at the strip club, picked up on internet. He has been with the Father. I was with him in Sabbath. I was with him in the Torah. I was with him in the Word, and I'm hearing what Elohim is saying while he's talking to him. We had a conversation. It confirmed what I was hearing. I confirmed what he was hearing. He said, babe, let's do it. I said, okay, babe, you gave me the signal. Let me go research this out, because I'm a better researcher, because that's why I'm the help meet the goal. I research the ideal out. I come back and I submit these ideas to my husband. I don't submit them to my boy toy, to my cabana boy. I don't submit them to my side dude. I submit them to my husband, which is why Paul says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, right? I don't even submit these to my work husband, i.e. my boss, i.e. my check provider. I don't submit them to them. When my husband and I get this vision, I submit the industry's ideas. I submit the understandings of this vision to my husband, and then he selects which route we're going to go. I get behind him because I know it. That's what you have when you have a proper process. So the assumption, when Paul is writing to the Ephesus church, he says to them, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but in fact admonish them and give them what they have called a reverence for the word. Now, here is why this is important, because if the father and the mother, who are technically supposed to be what brings a child into the earth, are communicating and chatting, once this stuff is done, I want you to watch this. This is very deep. This is very deep. He says, the father and the mother together are what causes the grace of Elohim to fall on you. So when a mother and a father, the conduit, the parenthood, the conduit, bring forth a human into the earth, i.e. a baby or a child, that's what we call it, that baby, that child is a human. Our job is to raise it from those phases of baby and child into manhood or womanhood. That's our job. We're responsible for literally caring for that. Do you know that's like farming? That's tilling the ground. Okay. You took a seed, you planted it into your woman's womb. She let it germinate and gestate. 3 trimesters, blossom the baby. Now you both till that ground to make sure that that child raises up and grows up straight. That might be too deep for today. Okay, let me go back to the statement. So when mom and dad bring forth that child, when the conduit bring forth that child is a human that belongs to Elohim. It don't belong to the conduit. It is made and derived from the conduit. So here's the catch, in case y'all think I'm wrong. Well, that's my child. That's my child. It's not your child. That's Elohim's child. Watch. When in fact Adam and Ishai were made in the garden, Adam and Eve, y'all like to call them that, when they were made in the garden, when in fact Elohim made man, he made man, Adam, he made man, male and female. Genesis 5:1-3. Just go read it. I'm going to just quote it real quick. So Genesis 5:1-3, Bereshit 5:1-3 makes this statement. In the beginning, the generation of man, Elohim made man, male and female, created he them. He then called their name Adam. So man had both masculine and feminine within it. This is not an argument for LGBT community or alternative lifestyles. This is no argument for them. You cannot use it there. He simply placed both masculinity and femininity in one body. Then when he had given masculinity, or he had given man humanity, which is 2 in 1, he gave humanity dominion over the earth. He showed them what his job was. He said, we don't have a man to till the ground. That's why man is in the earth, to till the ground, whether the plants that he put on the ground or the plants that will come out of you. So therefore, when we are doing our job properly, our job rightly, the world is a better place. So when that human produces, watch this very closely, but before that human produced, Elohim showed that human what its job would be. He then put humanity, Adam, to sleep. He pulled the feminine, the womb, out of man, humanity. Then he stood them both up. But what he did was he took and made a body for the womb man from the pulchritude of the first man. Therefore, that pulchritude of the first man is covering the womb man. And now you have man and woman. You have him, you have her, and they are still in their own bodies. Now, just because the womb man came from the man, does the man own the woman? No. So just because the baby came from your womb, you don't own that child. That child belongs to the father. You are responsible to till that ground. Oh yeah, it went there, didn't it? And the only way man and woman can till that ground properly, watch this, is by the grace of the Father. Now I do understand. Let me give y'all this precursor, or let me give y'all this clausing here so you understand what we're talking about. We know that men and women have children right now outside of marriage, so it's all screwed up. It's all screwed up. We're at a state of all screwed up. But let's talk about the intention of the kingdom, the intention of the kingdom of Elohim, what he intended to be done. So here is the point. When man has a child, that is a seed. Can't get around it. That's why the Bible says in many instances, remember when Messiah was talking to one man and the man was blind, and he told the man, he spit on the ground and put the spittle on the man's eyes. And he says, tell me what you see. The man opened up his eyes. He says, I see men like trees. He said, oops, oops, oops. You're still in the spirit. Close your eyes. Okay. Now tell me what you see now. He says, oh, I see clearly now, right? Because what he sees, men are plants. You and I are trees. The Bible references us as trees of righteousness. So we are plants. We are to till the ground. So technically, to care for one another properly, we are tilling the ground. I'm going to leave that right there. Some of you, I went over your heads. We'll talk about it during Sabbath. So let's look at this quickly. Am I talking too fast? Do I need to take a break? Yeah, let me do that real quick. Wet my tongue. So now, when that man and that woman, conduit, have another human, their job is to raise that human till it can stand on its own. Standing on its own is the job of the actual parents. However, the strength that child receives comes from the grace of Elohim to that child. How does grace come to that child while he's under the parenthood? Watch. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Look at this closely. He says, let me read verses 1-7. This is a sidebar, but it's going to bring you back to the point. Likewise, you wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, that they also may without the word be won by the conversations of the wives, while they beheld their chaste conversations, coupled with reverence, coupled with fear, whose adorning, let it not be outward adorning of plaiting of hair, and the wearing of gold, the putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of Elohim of a great price. For after this manner, in the old times, yada, 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 holy women who trusted in Elohim adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sariah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, calling him Master, whose daughters you are, as long as you do well and you are not afraid of any amazement. Verse 7, here it is. Pay attention. Likewise, you husbands, dwell with your wife according to knowledge, giving honor unto your wife as if she were the weaker vessel. You said, well, my Bible says as unto the weaker vessel. That's what it means, as if, as unto the weaker vessel. Didn't call her the weaker vessel. He says, give her honor as if she were weaker. And as your wife, being heirs together with you of the grace of life, that your, watch this, y'all, that your prayers be not hindered. Oops. So when you have a home life of marriage, when the husband and the wife are not at odd or not at odd with each other and they go to pray together, Elohim's grace just flows for them and flows on them. You husband, you wife must realize that the grace of Elohim can't be given to you in a marriage separately. The grace of Elohim, the grace of life, is giving you when you two are on one accord, working together for the same goal. Nobody trying to be leader. Everybody's trying to do the will of the Father. Everybody trying to be a good husbandman, a good tiller of the ground and the earth. Now, that's metaphorically, and it is true and accurate. It is accurate as well in our efforts at real life. Now, let me give this piece to y'all real quick. Watch this. We're still talking about what we need to discuss when we reference truth on raising children, both naturally and in our churches, because our pastors are technically calling themselves parents for the flock and the people, the congregation, right? So let's look at how this works. When in fact a father raises its child, mom with them, parenthood raises a child, they raise them in the fear and admonition, the reverence and the admonishments of the word. Once you've done that, that child now goes its own way. Solomon in Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, train up the child, parent, in the way that the child should go. Does anybody know the way that that child should go? Should it go the way of the Torah or should it go the way of the knowledge of good and evil? It should go the way of the Torah. Exactly. So when the child, your job, my job is to raise that child up in the fear and admonition of Elohim, train him up in the way that he should go, that when the child gets older, when I was a child, I thought like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Right? So when that child gets older, if you raise them in the fear and admonition of Elohim, I did not say raise them in the church. I did not say raise them remembering to be a part of the Christmas play or the Easter play every year. I did not say raise them and send them to Sunday school because you didn't go, but when the bus came by, you put your children on and sent them on to church, and you think you've raised them in the fear and admonition of Elohim. That is not raising them, training them up in the way that they should go. The way that they should go does not mean training them up to go to church. Nothing wrong with church. Don't come at me for that. Y'all know I'm making a deeper impression from the analogy and the example given. You don't just send your child to church and think you've raised your child in the fear of God, because there's evil inside that church. Satan goes to church. The seat of the synagogue of Satan is in every church. So you sending your child to church, though it propagates, it sells, and it has a billboard talking about God and a steeple talking about salvation, does not mean that that's the safest place on the planet for that child. I'm telling you what I know, not what I heard. So raising them in the fear and admonition of the Father is at home when you are with them in Shabbat, sitting them down and reading Torah and meditating with Elohim for those 24 hours as a family, telling your child, here is what happened at church the other day when Jimmy got in trouble because he stole that stuff, and then his mom came in and spanked him, and you got all that stuff that went on, and you saw that. Here is what the word says about that. Now, did they do this right? Come here, son. Come here, daughter. Let me sit you down and show you. Let me help you to understand the intentions of Elohim. When they wouldn't forgive that guy because he messed up like that, you see what they did? That's not in the Bible. We got to forgive our brother. So if that brother comes to you, you can give that brother grace. You can actually extend him mercy. He don't need your mercy, but the word says that if your brother is overtaken in a fault, you who are supposed to be spiritual, restored such a one. If your brother's offended you 4, 5, 6, 7 times, then you are supposed to forgive that brother. It doesn't matter. 7 times 70. You forgive him. That's what a parent does. That's what Sabbath helps you accomplish. So now watch. Once you've done that as a child, when that child now is an adult, they make their own choice. They make their own decision. They may leave the foundation you gave them to venture off into their own world, just like you did, to do their own thing. Now, prayerfully, you have raised them solidly in reasoning and deduction and conclusion and making equations and getting summations from the word of Elohim that it just can't leave their mind. When they get older, though they may purposefully veer from it because they don't want to go to church with you, they don't want to be stuck under your house, they got their own house, they make their own money, now they got their own children. As time goes on, when that child who has now become an adult starts to mature as an adult, they'll realize the foundation you set before them and the stabilization system you use to keep them from wobbling in the world, and they'll begin to return back to it. Thus, your prodigal son example. We got this thing twisted. We think that the child belongs to us. And when the child goes out there after leaving our house, 24, 25 years old, that child is grown. You don't run that child. You can't tell that child what to do. You can suggest. Once you have raised that child and you have no longer the legal responsibility of both the state and or Elohim, your job is to raise that whip into a stable tree, into a solid stalk that can produce its own fruit. And once you let your child grow up, though you love them, though you are attached to taking care of them, that's your addiction, not theirs. You and I got addicted to taking care of them. You and I got addicted to making sure the air conditioner was on, the heat was on, the oil was in the house, that there was food in the cupboards, that they had their needs met, that their medical issues were straight, their dentistry was good, their optics and their optometry was taken care of, and their sporting events were taken care of, their education. We got addicted to that. We had one job to do, that's raise that child and then let that child be the man, the woman that they're supposed to be. And you can't go back into that child to tell them what to do unless they ask you. Now, that's the natural part of this discussion today. You don't own your child. You can't get upset with your child because your child decided not to serve the God you sent them to church to serve. If you did your job right, if you lived in your home, Elohim rightly, they will not depart that peace, because when they go to make their own home, they go get their own apartment, they go shack up with this person. You know, God ain't said no shacking up. I ain't raised you to shack up with nobody. Oh my God, Pastor, pray for me, Pastor. My child, they on drugs, they doing that. You did all that mess too until you got your head and your heart and your mind straightened out with God as well. So now you got to give them that same ability to experience life. Prayerfully, they won't perish in their choice, but it is their choice. You can only sit back, watch what they do, and let them know, hey, I'm here if you need help on that decision you're trying to make. And sometimes just them seeing you with your hands open, saying, if you want information from me, I can give it to you, because you're grown, you're going to do what you want to do anyway. I'm a bag of wisdom for you. I'm a bag of refresh for you. I'm the book, the textbook you came from. So when they go make their own house and they go make their own apartment, they go shack up with that person, when they don't have that same peace they had when they was in your home, if your home was a home of peace, then they will not depart from that peace. They're like, man, I'm out here doing my own thing. I'm wilding out and I'm going fast. I'm moving fast. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm living by the race speed of time, and I'm rat racing and all this stuff like that. But then when they can't come to lay down in that space that they've made their new home, they don't have that kind of peace and tranquility and harmony and that soundness of mind, a place they can come in and be by themselves. It's not chaotic. They will realize, you know, this ain't the house I was raised with. Then they come back to mom and dad and says, Mom and Dad, why my bedroom ain't as peaceful where I'm at as it was when I was here? And then they want to come home and stay with you. They want to come home and eat with you. They want to come home and be with you. But you got to let them come. You can't force them to come. You can't demand they be there for Thanksgiving dinner. You can't demand they be there for your family reunion. That child is an adult on its own mission. You were used to bring them into fruition, and prayerfully you raise them stationary that they can walk and still hear God, even though they go do their own thing, just like you. That's the truth on raising children. And now you get caught up in trying to make your child what you want them to be. That's another addiction that we have, not the child. Your child comes with a plan from Elohim, and your plans for that child, no, your plan is to, your job, your only job is to raise that child in the reverence of Elohim. He will tell them what they're supposed to do. You can teach them new garments. You can share with them new experiences. You can tell them, hey, this is probably something you might enjoy, but they still ultimately make the decision whether that's what they want or not. I remember, in short, before I get on the spiritual side of this, I remember, in short, my son, my youngest son, my namesake. I'm a basketball. Y'all know me. I'm good at well, some of y'all that know me in my history. I'm a baller. I play ball. I play basketball, for real basketball. And so my son did not want to play basketball. I was in my feelings about it for a while until Elohim told me, you raise that child to understand who I am. He's got his own taste, his own flair, his own flavor. All of a sudden, he, in my opinion, right, y'all know, because I come from a black African-American home, right? We call that a black home, right? A black person's home, right? I don't know why we do what we do. And so, in that, there's certain sports we play. Basketball, football is one of them, right? Now, these are shared with other cultures as well. But stuff like skateboarding wasn't really popular as a sport. It was just a thing you did. You had a skateboard, you skated to somebody's house on it, right? Well, he wanted to go to Vans, buy Vans, and in black home you bought Nikes. Yeah, we don't buy Vans now. You do, y'all do now, but back in that we wear Nikes. Well, he started buying Vans. I had to bow down and say, that's what you like. I can't force what I like on you, even though I'm showing you how to properly do it and giving you all that swag and that drip from that tip. But at the end of the day, your fashion statement, your fashion sense is yours. I have to honor that. So I had to get behind what he wanted to do. So when you are raising a child, you must pay attention, raise him up in the way that he should go. Whatever they navigate to, whatever they gravitate to, you watch where they're going, and you be the guardian over how they enter into that arena. You keep them safe. You give them information. So if they want to get into Vans, if they want to get into skateboarding, they want to get into lacrosse, that's what it was. So he went for lacrosse. I never played lacrosse, but I had to go and find every book I could find on lacrosse, make sure I understood it, get him the best possible gear to keep him protected and safe, show him all the techniques that went along with lacrosse. He's just a little boy. He sees a stick and a ball flying. It's fun. It's interesting. It's cardio. He wants to do it. I ain't with it. I'm not trying to get hit in the head with a baseball. He don't know the danger of that. I'm not going to make him fearful. Buy him a solid helmet, put on the pads he needs, make sure he's safe, because that's what he wants to do. And then once he's doing it, he has to decide whether he want to continue doing it or not. So I want to make sure you understand this process on the truth of raising up a child. I had to get in front of where he said he wanted to go. So while he said, Dad, I want to go do that, I'm like, yeah, but we don't do that. But Dad, I want to do that. Well, you know what? My bad. I can't tell you what to do. Cool. So you like it. It is a sport. People are doing it. There's a whole genre behind it. While he's sleeping, I'm up studying lacrosse. I'm up studying whatever it was he liked and he enjoyed. And now when he wakes up, so that he doesn't feel like I'm throwing him off on a lacrosse coach, I can also be relevant in his life because I understand what he says he wants to do. When he has a question, hey, I read this about this, man. Well, Dad, I don't know how to do this backflip. Oh, look, right here. Come here, let me show you. Now he still has his dad involved in his, and your parent is showing the child that you are interested in what they're interested in, or you're relevant in what they're interested in. And they don't think that you're mad at them because they're doing something you didn't do when you were coming up and you don't prefer it. So as soon as they say, well, I don't want it, I don't want to do this no more, I'm so glad I told you that stuff wasn't for you anyway. No. Honor that child. Help that child. Don't provoke them to wrath. Don't make them think that what they feel they want to do is predicated on what you want them to do. That's the truth about raising a child, because that child don't belong to you. That child belongs to Elohim. That's a human. While they're in child state, while they're in baby state, you are tilling the ground. The grace to do that comes from that connection with mom and dad. Y'all know we ain't got it. I had a child born out of wedlock before I got married. I had a child out of wedlock. I was a child. I had a child. And then I got married and had children in my marriage. But the point is, the grace that hits that child comes from that connection with that father and mother working together. That's why this diabolical scheme of the enemy of our faith, particularly in the African-American community, now we can say it's a global epidemic as well, because you got all these planned parenting issues going on. You got all these people trying to do all these different things apart from, and if you don't give me support, you can't see the child. That does not let the grace of Elohim flow to that child. So you two knucklehead parents, hardhead, selfish, I got to have my way, I got to be right parents are causing the child in the tilling the ground stages not to be foundationalized in a solid, sure, good depth of ground, because you petty trying to be you, and it's supposed to be about your job of raising that child. Once Elohim puts a child through your system, you are responsible for raising that child into a human like you, and then let them live their life as a human. They have to answer to Elohim. They can't make heaven or hell because of you, but your responsibility is to give them what Elohim did to Adam. He gave Adam all good. Adam messed around and ate that cookie jar. Adam went into that cookie jar before Yahweh said, go get it. And he ate the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what got him going on that path that he's on. We got to do the same thing. Lay out for our children all good in the fear and admonition of Elohim. Let that be what they have as a foundation. Once they start experiencing the knowledge of good and evil on their own terms, with their own friends, sneaking around at night while y'all in all-night prayer in the back of the church, smoking weed, snorting cocaine, sexing in the cars, doing whatever, watching porn, buying books, detective, hustler. Now you got the whole video internet and all that stuff like that. All that's being done while you people are in church. So sending them to church ain't sending them into the fear and admonition of Elohim. But when you come into your home on Shabbat and you make your home the church for Elohim and your family, now you're raising them. Here is what Elohim says. Now you're going to do what you want to do, son, daughter. I'm not talking about while they're young. As long as you're in my house, you're going to do what we do. Now, once you get out of my house, you have the right to say, no, Dad, I'm not doing that. I can't stop you. You make your own money. You pay your own rent. You buy your own food. You pay your own gas. You might need a loan from me every now and then. I might still want to hook you up and make sure you got something in your house and, say, hey, let me send you some groceries to the house or whatever, but at the end of the day, they got to make their own call just like you did. So when you and I were children and we became adults, God knows when we got out, we ain't want to listen to what mom and dad had to say. Matter of fact, we stayed as far away from them for the first 2 years when we got out on our own as we could. We call and text and say, hey, mom, how you doing? Fly by, come by for the family functions. The holidays you had, your where you ate and did your meals with the other family members, but you stayed away from mom and dad because you're trying to do your own thing. Those children have that same exact mindset because they are just like you. They are adults. They are their own. My mom don't own me. Your mom, you don't own your child. Your mom don't own you. Your dad don't own you, but they did have a responsibility to raise you. Did they do that right? Let's pray they did. However, at the end of the day, the truth about being, in fact, raising of children is that you raise them in the fear and admonition of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. Now, some of you are saying that you guys are losing connection. Moderators, please pay attention to my boards. I don't know what's going on, but I'm hoping that you guys on the video streams will get it back. We're fine here. We're full of power here. We're still broadcasting. So I want to make sure you get this. Stop trying to make your child, especially when they become a young adult, your slave. Them children are not your slaves. They are not your janitors. You are to teach them community. You are to teach them how to be responsible. You are to teach them how to be accountable. You are to teach them how to have get up and go, how to communicate within a team. So when you don't send them to school to learn that, you send them to school to advance that learning. You be the foundation of what community looks like. That's why they must do their chores. And any parent who lets their children skate on doing home chores so they can go and be a part of a basketball, football, tennis, volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, golf, tennis team, you're a poor parent. Because if they don't understand teamwork at home, they won't understand teamwork out on the road. So if they're not going to play team, if they're not going to take the chores, if they're not going to wash their clothes, if they're not going to fold their clothes, if they're not going to change their bed, if they're not going to wash their dishes when they put them in the sink, if they don't do the chores you and the household have set, then they are not ready to be a teammate with anybody else. So at the end of the day, this is what we must understand about life. Now, that's the truth about raising children. And the part of the truth I want to emphasize is that the child doesn't belong to you and I, though you are responsible for that child. But once that child becomes a man, once that child becomes a woman, once that child chooses who they want to have relationships with, you can only advise. And then that advice has to come at their request. That frequency of confidence in you and coming to you will be predicated on this simple instruction of whether or not you raise them, one, to fear Elohim and to reverence him and to give them the admonishments of what is right in the word. Babe, this is right. Son, this is wrong. Sir, this is right. Sir, that's wrong. Daughter, this is right. Daughter, that's wrong. All of these things are necessary and to be, as we say, understood. Now, let me move from this piece here. That's just, again, a quick, short snippet because I do family counseling, so I can get long-winded here. But the one thing that I know that most parents do, and we can translate this to what we do wrong as pastors in churches as well, is we think the people belong to us, and they don't. Your job is to provide to them what life's supposed to look like. And sometimes we get caught up in trying to live our lives while we're responsible for training lives, that we leave the trained that we're responsible for to watching us make the mistakes. When we're supposed to, from a solid position of what we know to this point, make sure that that's what they see. Make sure that that's what they receive. Make sure that that's what they understand. Here is what the word says. Here's what we do. And then as they get older and more mature, you're letting them now critically think and make the decisions based on solid information of rightness. And they're going to do like you do. And if you be true with yourself, parent, pastor, you don't always do what you teach. And though you know what you're teaching is right, because it's the word of Elohim, you still know in given situations, you choose contrary to what is right. You take the risk, you gamble. And then when your child does it, you want to cut their head off because, well, I got to cut them. I got to stop them from doing it now. No, you got to show them how to come through it and how to better adhere to the rightness in the moment. God knows I had to learn that. And I'm still trying to learn that to this very day. So now we make this statement, and I'm going to switch over to, are you guys getting your, you guys are getting your, are you on YouTube and Facebook? You guys okay there? Moderators, please. Moderators, please. Moderators, please. And so if you're getting signal, just give me a thumbs up. I see the numbers keep dropping. So somebody says, you guys are losing connection. I don't know what to do to help y'all.
We are good.
Okay, thank you. So are y'all you guys learning anything? Is this helpful for y'all today?
Yes, it is.
Because especially now in the world that we live in with these single parent homes, it's single parent homes. Unfortunately, the numbers are staggering. How many it is? I remember last I checked, I may be inaccurate here, but last I checked, single family homes to dual family homes, dual parent homes, single parent homes versus dual parent homes. I think are like 2 and 7, 3 and 7, something like that. That's crazy. So there's like 7 singles to 3 duals, right? And so that affects the dynamic of our communities and our neighborhoods and how things go and get done. Now, when we take the time to train our children in single family homes, man, it can be difficult because you're everything. Your mom, your dad. If you're a single dad, your mom, your dad. If you're a single mom, your mom, your dad, right? And you got to adjust, right? Elohim will help us with that when we seek him and his word for righteousness. And that void can be somewhat overcome when we keep our child in the way of the word early. It becomes difficult with everything inside that child's genealogy and everything inside of that child's generational line of blessings and curses and proclivities and propensities that we allow to happen and allow to go on. That if the earlier you start with the word, the earlier you start with the admonishment about the word, the greater the opportunity. When the child gets older, they will, in times of decisions, default to what the home was teaching. That's just a fact. Now, if they're on contraband and they out of their head and they out of their mind, too many moms and too many dads who have children that have gone out feel that you have the right to drag them back in by whatever force you need. I'm not telling you don't care for, don't pray for, don't be there for your children. That is not what we're talking about. But you don't own that child. That child, that human is Elohim's. You have the responsibility of raising them. And in truth, it starts with us from the birth. It starts with us from conception. It starts with us being there for that child, no matter how many you got. It's doable. Being there for that child and not trying to be you while raising these children. Get them raised and then go back to what you should do, because you should be grown enough and solid enough now that you focus on, how do I keep this child protected from the things that almost got me in trouble? How do I keep this child knowledgeable of the things that I did not have knowledge of? How do I keep this child progressing towards the areas I was not being prodded into? How do I make sure that this child's critical thinking becomes effective and proficient at times when they need it most? And that is what the parent is supposed to do. Also, now I'm going to transition to the church. That's what the church is supposed to do. That's what the pastor of the church is supposed to do. Make sure that we understand what it is we're putting down that is actually from the word of Elohim. So the new believer or the existing congregant, citizen, member of your church knows how to practically walk out these things when life hits them. And not to browbeat them, punish them, embarrass them, humiliate them, but constantly let them know when they ask, when they come forward, and when you have opportunities and a captive audience to share. Here's what Elohim wants. Here is what the word says. Now, you grown, y'all make y'all own money. Y'all got 80,000 churches to choose from. But since you came here and sat here, here is what we do. Here is how we believe. Here is what we can vet. Here is what his word does say. And we'll show you. You can study it with us. We'll study it with you. We'll answer your questions. Here is what it says. But even after we've answered your questions, even after we've given you your help and research, and we've presented what this ministry believes, you're still going to do what you want to do. You still may say, I don't want to be at that church. I want to be at that church because for some reason, I like their lighting system. For some reason, I like they're a little softer. Apostle can talk too long and they don't talk as long, or whatever it may be. But the job of pastoring, i.e. parenting from a church perspective, translating to a parenting of a home's perspective, is to make sure the meals we serve are filling, they are healthy, they are nutritional, they are of value, they give you proper thinking, proper tools to use, they fill your cachet, help you sharpen your tools. Iron sharpens iron. You're learning what you need to learn from people who are seasoned in that way of life. If you have a particular proclivity, that thing can be vetted out in the word. If you have a particular propensity, that thing can be given admonishments against or for, because all proclivities ain't bad, right? The issue is it's something you're attracted to. You can vet it through the word. That's what the pastor is supposed to do. The pastor does not own a member. And if the member don't come to church, you go dragging them back in, get in a cell group to go around there and find Sally, Jimmy, Janny, and Annie and tell them you a devil, you in sin because you ain't in our church. That's not what we do. That's not how you raise the children of Elohim, who happen to be given as your responsibility for the phases, baby, child, adult, that they go through. Your job is to provide rock solid nutrition from the word of Elohim for everyone who comes, parks themselves there of their own volition. If they get up and leave, that's on them. You hope that they will continue. Should you be teaching well? Should you be giving nutritious information, healthy tools, effective tools for life, proper counsel and wisdom of the word? That person will be where they find their most safety. And I don't mean from their version of what they think is safe and what they think is healthy, because there's a lot of weird stuff out here in the world. But your job as a pastor, just like it is as a father of a home, a mother of a home, is to make sure that the food you serve in this house, that the regulations are according to the edicts of the writ. Hey, we're home before the lights go out. Hey, we check in for dinner at the dinner table. Hey, we wash the plates. One does the floor. One does the dishes. One cleans out the fridge. One takes out the trash. One mops the upstairs. One gets the bathrooms clean. And we do this as a unit. This is safe for us. Make sure that the grass is cut. We make sure that it's trimmed. One takes care of security. Make sure if there's a problem with the roof, somebody gets notification and it gets prepared. All of this goes into how you raise children, because those things they're going to need to know how to manage when they have their own home when their time comes. But the point is that the child does not belong to the parent, though the parent is responsible for the child. And for the church to know is that the member don't belong to the pastor, though the pastor at that time, by the actual parishioner's request, is now covering them, and they need to cover them with the word and with the rightness of nutritious meals and tools from said. This is the truth about raising children naturally and in church, kingdom style. Now, one last thing I want to put into a myth of. Are y'all learning anything, or am I just boring y'all with this conversation?
Learning and tracking.
Learning.
One last thing for the parents, and then I'm going to switch to the church and finish one last point for the church. Moms, particularly, and dads, when your child tells you they're grown, and you know you've done everything and you are doing everything you can to let them know that you don't know what you think you know, son. You don't know what you think you know, daughter. I got this. And now with this internet, y'all, you are in competition. They swear they know it because they saw it online. And I saw it online, but you don't know how to use that. You don't know how to wield that. You don't know the proper context for that. I know you got the content, but dear heart, you do need to understand there is a way that gets done. There's so much of that you can use. All things are good. Not everything is expedient. So at the end of the day, you need to understand what we call moderation. If you don't, you think you can just jump out there and do it. You go, I'm grown. I do what I want to do. Okay, when you get out of my house and you go do what you got to do out there. Because in this house, as for me and my house, as long as you're in it, as long as you're eating out that fridge, as long as you're drinking from my cupboard, you in this house, we will do things this way. When you get your own, when you're legally old enough, you go do that. In this house, this is how it works. And so that is something that you as parents, we have to understand. And you can't back up on it. Well, that's my child. If I put them out, where are they going to go? They just told you to kiss their backside. They children, I know. But if they telling you they're grown and they keep doing grown stuff and they come in your house, the wrong hour of the night, contrary to what you want, you need to let them experience grown folks' responsibilities, i.e. grown folk consequences for grown folk action. The fortunate part for them is they're still going to be deemed, if they're underage, they're going to be deemed as, minors to the law, and that will get them back to you. So now you have to use the literal issue to bring them back to their senses and say, see, you weren't ready for that, were you? No, I ain't know that was going to happen. Oh no. Okay, great. So now they'll listen to you, right? But even if they get past that stage, and if you got a child who is beyond the legal age that the law says you're no longer responsible for that child, you got to let that child go and live. Let that boy go. That boy is never going to be a man if you keep coddling him and holding on to him. Let his butt go. He want to snort coke. He want to do Molly. He want to pop ecstasy. He want to be smoking weed all up in your place, in your car. You told him not to. You around here doing this and doing that. You got this going on. You making babies. And all of them got to come home to me as grandma. Oh, no, granddad, boy, you must be out you better get out of here. You have to let that be known. Now, you're not being mean. This is life. Just follow nature. After an eagle catches some chicks, after a while, that eagle baby, that chick is wingspan gets to a certain point where you covering my nest, the main eagle's like, you got to go, get out of here. Pushes him right out the nest. Bye. Spread your wings. Let that wing get under you. All right, there you go. Yeah, you hit that tree pretty hard. Well, you'll learn next time. That's the way it's got to be. And see, we don't like that. And we say, oh, that's not God. That ain't the love of God. No, that's not the love of God. That what you're saying isn't the love of Elohim. Raise that child in the fear and admonition of him. If they don't obey that, then they're not going to live the benefits of that word, but they'll live the actual opposite of that word. And that's by their choosing. That person is a human that is belonging to Elohim, and they, like you, have to choose this day who they're going to serve. If you've done your job appropriately, then they're going to make it happen. They're going to remember what you taught them. They're going to be reasonable. They're going to probably have their moments of being rebellious. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but what you must understand is you have to make sure, okay, I'm giving you everything you need to succeed. Now you keep throwing it in my face and keep throwing it back at me and keep crapping all over me and what we're doing for you and everybody else. You don't have no respect for any other human in this space. Again, teamwork. If you don't understand community in this house, then we're going to be community. You got to go there, especially if you're old enough to go out there and get your job, determine whether or not you want to continue with your education and your degrees. At this point, you're making your own calls. So go get your own space, because here I got to live in peace and tranquility and harmony in this house. And if you bring disharmony, that door is for you. Apostle, you telling people to put their children out? Because we think that the child is ours, we are responsible to raise them. After that, they have to live. Just like you. Is your mom and dad responsible for your decisions and your choices? Stop letting your children think that You're responsible for the choices and decisions that they make. Y'all didn't hear me. I'm going to say it again. Do you think that your mother and father, I'm talking to you, I'm talking to me too. Do you think your mother and your father are responsible for the decisions that you've made? I don't. I never did. I never will. And when my parents think that they are, I let them know, I knew what was right to do. I did what I did. I knew what was wrong to do, and I did what I did. I did the right thing, or I did the wrong thing. You did not. You taught me, because you taught me what's right and wrong. I know what should have been done. So do not let your children make you think their decisions are because of you. And now you go through this guilt complex and before God, oh God, did I do wrong, God? There is a sense of accountability that we all have and say, Father, could I have done better? What could I have done better? But you need to understand, every human being has this key thing in them, and that is called acclimation. They have this key thing in them that's called survival. It's just what we do. We just happen to live in a box where we put it in textbooks what you need to do, how you need to operate, and we have this system. But before there was a system, how do you think the first humans managed life? We don't think we're at that stage. So again, make it your business to be about admonishing your children. But when it comes to being straight with your child, woman or man, like I said, your child becomes a woman, your child becomes a man. They're making their own calls and pulling their own shots, disrespecting, disobeying, and blatantly telling you what they're not going to do. They got to go. Now, the issue is we got addicted to our children and taking care of them, because this is so cute. I got a new grandbaby, and I promise you, I have grandchildren, but each time I hold one of my grandchildren, they have my whole heart. And at the same time, I now have to think, all right, how do I start paving paths for them to walk on? And I had to do it different because when I was raising my own children, I got addicted to providing for them. So then when they went to college, I was in my feelings when they didn't need me anymore. Now, I raised them to be critical thinkers. I raised them to be providers. I raised them to not take anything from anybody. Whatever you need, you get it on your own. If you can't get it from that, you come see me. Right. And then when they got to the point when they're doing the very thing I trained them to do, I'm addicted to being El Shaddad, that I got in my feelings and all up in myself and got huffy and puffy with them. And then I'm charging them falsely because they're doing what I taught them to do. Naive in some cases, but they are doing what I taught them to do. And so because I'm addicted to being their all in all, it's a hard detach. And though we know we got to let our children go, because what happens if you pass away? They got to figure it out. That's why there's a thing called weaning. It's no different than a mother who has a baby on the pap. You got to wean that baby off the pap. They can't be sucking on your breast at 8 years old. That's problematic. That's an issue that, you as parent are responsible for. And so we're raising monsters because we won't raise responsible people. And we got to teach them what no means. We have to teach them what, patience is about. We have to teach them what planning is about. We have to teach them, about life. And there are hard choices that have to be made early, so that once we get to that place where we're looking at, well, I got to start letting them go now. How do I do it? It's easier to make that. You've perforated that ledge so that when the weight on the other side of that preparation is proper, it'll break off naturally. You won't be caught up in your feelings. They won't be looking at you weird, and all these things can happen smoothly. And so now, because you might be in a situation, well, I'm in it now. It's still easy to get done. Just get yourself into some counseling with someone who understands proper parenting. And I don't mean this Dr. Spock theory that's out there, because clearly it didn't work for him. That book don't work. It didn't even work for his own household. So no disrespect and no pun or no disregard and no disrespect intended. That's just a fact. The book don't work. So make it your business to find out what Elohim says about it. Because if you pay attention to Torah, you will see where when a child was unruly in a home, they took that child to the council of Torah, and then they evaluated that child and their mindset and their efforts and where they're really coming from. And then the council of the word with the parents made a determination and a conclusion on how this child, this person, needs to be dealt with according to Elohim's word. Deeper conversation later. So I think that hopefully we realize one point from this talk. You don't own the child, parent. You are responsible for that child. But that child belongs to Elohim, and what Elohim put in the earth is an adult for his glory. You just have to help raise them and stabilize them until they become an adult, and then you have to let them go. They have a whole different path from you to check. Even though you might set them up with generational wealth, does not mean that they belong to you and you can determine what they do. Once you turn that company over to them, and once you turn over whatever to them, they have the right to do with it what they want. The only thing you can pray for is that you train them in the values for why it was literally saved up and stored up for them. And then they still have the right to choose to take it a different direction. Maybe times change and they move with the flow of time. You won't understand it because you were addicted to why you saved it. You were addicted to why you stored it. You were addicted to why you did it. At the end of the day, we have to remember, because this is the biggest problem I see in our counseling sessions, is that the parent thinks they own the child. And they think that they are responsible for the child's decisions. Especially the child who is a young adult, who keeps telling you that they are an adult, who did the same thing you did to your parents. And now that it's happening to you, you don't know how to act. The biggest piece of advice I can render here in rightness is to tell every parent, whether you're single parent home or a dual parent home, is to think back to when you were that child's age. How you responded to your parent, how you disdained what your parent says, how you felt your parent was trying to hold you back, how you felt your parent was trying to disrespect you and treat you like a child. Think back to how you thought, and then you can better see where they're coming from. They may be belligerent, they may be overly exertive, but at the end of the day, you can see the core of it, because all that is just symptoms of a deeper issue, and that may be an insecurity piece that the parenthood is the only one able to fix. Don't mean you coddle their actual topical expressions and tantrums. It means you watch what they're doing. And when you see that they're so far off base, you sit back and find a way and ask Elohim, you find a way to get into where they're at, because they're you. They're you 2.0. And you can think, you know what? I was that way with my mom. Man, is this how I looked? Anybody will admit that. Like you see your children, you're like, oh God, was that what I did to my mom? And I'm still alive. I know I do. Because every time my children do something that I have to sit back, I have to say, I have to give what I'm giving you, I do myself. When my children, though they're all grown now, when they do certain tendencies, I think back to how I was at that time. And I'm like, ooh, that's me. Or, you know, knowing their mother's like, ooh, that's their mom. And now you know how to approach them, and you can literally begin to use that as recon for how you're going to address them later. Because just coming at them like, I'm your dad, I'm your mom, do what I say, ain't gonna work. You have to treat a young adult like an adult, young. So you have to have real conversations. You can't be selective. You can't be disrespectful of what you think they can handle. You have to have brass conversations with your children while they're young, because as they get older, it's harder to teach them things. Have brass tacks conversations with them. That's why we have this rating called PG, parentally guided, parental guidance. Talk to them about real life. Don't Google Gaga your baby. We didn't, our children, when our babies came into the world, I was talking to my children in the womb. I was reading to them in the womb, singing to them in the womb. When they came out, there was no Google Gaga, and anybody in my family came around, oh, get out. No, we don't talk like that. Talk the English. Talk it articulately, speak to them clearly so they can understand quicker over time what we're saying and see our actions with those sounds and those phonetics. And that's how you connect it. I just wish I would have taught them that my children do know multiple languages, but I wish I would have done a better job with that, right? But making sure that you're having real conversations, putting them in real situations. And my children grew up around me anyway as a pastor, typical stereotypic pastor of the Christian church early in their life, though later we switched to what you have today. And so they got to hang around adults who were some of the biggest children you could ever meet. And they were the adults in the room sometimes, you know. And so that's because of in our home, we don't play. We read, we educate, we research, we let them ask real questions, and we give them real answers. We strategize. The parenthood strategizes on how to bring it up. If we see them gravitating to that phase of life, we know the phase before they do. And if we're paying attention, if we're training up our child in the way that they are going, we get ahead of where they're headed. And this way we can start paving the road for them to walk on so they don't hit those potholes and those ditches. So I want y'all to understand that this is extremely important to what we do and how we are to, by Elohim's charge, train up our children in the way that we should go, that they should go. Again, it doesn't mean you tell your child, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, you're going to do this, you're going to do. No, you have to watch what they do. And as long as it's healthy, as long as it's, everything has a negative and a positive to it. You have to make sure you show them everything about that genre, everything about what they're getting into, and then let them decide while you parentally guide. But give them the right to choose which way they want to go with it. And if it's not proper, you now have something to work with. If it is proper, you have something to elevate. And when they say, you know what, I had my fill of that, you're going to be disappointed because you put, like I did with lacrosse, I put all this money and time into learning this daggone sport. And then after he got hit with a good hard ball, now he's like, well, I'm switching to another sport. Right. So now I got to go and learn that sport, all over again. But here's the beauty of that with my son as an example. Once he went through his phase of finding out what he thought was interesting to him, and I became his coach in those areas and got coaches for him in those areas. And then he said, you know what, Pop? I'm not going to do them. I'm going to come do basketball. I was like, oh, snap, man. Yes, I ain't got to learn that one. I know that one, right? But I had to learn at great cost what it was he was interested in. Same with my daughter. I had to learn what she was interested in. Thank God I knew volleyball. Thank God I understood soccer, right? So I was able to be a part of that and then get them to coaches who understood the game, and I could vet those coaches who was trying to make themselves great as opposed to making the team work. So all of these things are necessary when you and I look at how we train our child in the way they should go. So typically, that's the process forward. It mirrors your church experience as a church family. Though we got it structured in the headship wrong because we think the pastor is everything, because of the way it's set up and repurposed, we're going to go with the pastor being the parent. That parent, that pastor also watches and monitors how the people flow and function so they can as we say, anybody know the job of a pastor? Any KYC graduates, alumni out there that know the job of a pastor on the fivefold ministry scale? Anybody?
TK.
Talk to me, TK.
Orientate.
The pastor orientates the people, just like the father and the mother. Please, y'all, watch my platform, please. So the mother and father orientates the child to life. The pastor of the church orientates the congregant, the newcomer or the experienced comer, to the things of the kingdom at the phases that they end up elevating to. Y'all always say this stuff, always for the negative, but never for the positive. Oh, each new level, there's a new devil. Well, each new level, there's also a new level for elevation. So each level a person goes to, your pastor has to be seasoned enough that they've been through enough levels and themselves are still living into enough levels that they're able to give you a hand and pull you up to that new level, and they're orientating you to that level. Because what you thought was normal down here, and you might see the same thing up here, it hits different up here. It don't hit like it hit down here. And this is where you have to have that wisdom. But just because I'm 18 levels above that situation, 18 phases above that situation, I still got to remember when I was at that phase with that situation, how to communicate that to that person at phase 1. Then if I see somebody at phase 2 of that problem, because I'm at 18, I can communicate. I can't give them 18 level information and they still at phase 1, phase 7. I got to meet them at phase 7. What does that mean? I have to become introspective. I have to look back at how it was for me when I was at that stage, when I was at that phase. This is what we do as parents, as pastors. We orientate that particular subject to life. That's why the parenthood of the church must consist of a pastor, must consist of an evangelist, must consist of a prophet, must consist of a teacher. That's the parenthood of the church. And right now, most of us are running on just one element, and that's the pastor. And then we let prophets come in. We let evangelists fly through. We let teachers, we send them out to be taught. The church needs to have the whole fivefold ministry in place so we can understand what must be and should be done. Now, here's the catch, and I'm running behind, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I want to take y'all to this part in the church that we do when we talk about these things. What's the passage I want y'all to get? Let me take y'all to Matthew chapter 18. This is for the church. This is for the church. This is for the church. Can y'all say this part's for the church?
This part's for the church.
But it's also going to mirror your homes. Listen, I know we're gonna be 2 hours on this broadcast. So those of you who need to go and come back, go and come back. But I want to show this to you. Matthew 18. Matthew 18. So a disciple of a rabbi, or talmudim of a rabbi, a disciple of a pastor, a leader, a child to a parent, they are similar in their function and practicality, right? So in Matthew chapter 18, I'm gonna go down to verse number 10, putting it on the screen for you guys to read it for those of you who are still unable to pull your own Bibles up. Now, we lost a lot of people again. I don't know if that's broadcasting issues or just they got to go because it's lunchtime. But we're going to be good with that. Matthew chapter 18, verse 10. Okay, this is important because I want y'all to stop missing this and mixing this up in the church. And for all the pastors and leaders that we have with us who have their own churches that they are overseeing and giving insight to, I want to make sure that we do this the right way because it's important. It's utterly important. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Matthew 18:10 through 14. Matthew 18:10 through 14. Look at this. Take heed that you despise not one of these little ones. For I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of Yahweh, which is in heaven, which is in Shamayim. Verse 11. For the Son of Man is come to save that which is lost. Verse 12. How think ye if a man have 100 sheep? How do you think about this? Verse 12 again. Yeshua is asking the question. How do you think about this? Okay. If a man have 100 sheep and one of them be gone astray, does he not leave the 99 and go into the mountains and seek that which is gone astray? And so be, and if so be that he finds it, verily I say unto you, he rejoices more of that sheep than of the 99 which went not astray. Even so, it is not the will of your Father which is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Now, y'all know in Christendom, we do way too much, right? But if you pay attention to verse number 13 and verse 12 and 13, and we talk about this inside of our churches, and this is where the churches stretch themselves too thin to do what they're supposed to do, because your job is to train them up in the way that they should go. And you utilize the good shepherd in this storyline to say, you got to go after these people who don't come to your church when y'all having church because they've gone astray. And we revert to Matthew 18:12. If you have 100 sheep and one of them go astray, does he not leave the 99 and go after them into the mountains? And then once he finds them, he rejoices more over the one he found than the 99 that stayed. Let me help y'all with this so you understand what this particular parable is talking about. Can I teach y'all? I need to know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you're dealing with a shepherd takes the flock of 100 from pasture to pasture. Okay? And so when he takes them from pasture to pasture, there is a transition and a transit that they go through and they go on. I want you to hear this. So when in fact the shepherd is transporting by his team of shepherds and maybe even sheepdogs, they are transferring from one pasture to another pasture, because once they eat that pasture they're on up, they got to transfer to another pasture, right? But what happens is in transit from one move to the next move of that shepherd, of that family's flock, they are in transit. If in transit a sheep gets lost, you stop to go and try to find that sheep, because it's possible while 100 lamb are moving, one could get snatched by a bobcat, one could get snatched by a lion or a bear. Of course, there would be a ruckus. Typically, you would hear it. Maybe a dog would bark, but maybe the lamb or that sheep could just, or if they don't get snatched up because they just veered out of the path that has been set before them, that the shepherd is on, and he doesn't look back in enough time. If that lamb veers off, maybe they stopped to go to the restroom or something, and they just got lost in transit. This passage is referencing the loss of one in transit. Here is why it's important to understand, pastors, that you expose yourself to scenarios that are not the will of the Father when you misunderstand the culture. Learn shepherding, before you preach it. And don't think because you're a pastor, you are a shepherd. That's ignorant. Learn shepherding. So when a transition of the flock is happening, if a lamb gets lost, when he does the head count, when he brings them to a place to rest before they get to the next pasture, or maybe they get to the pasture, he checks, oh my good, we're missing one. How do we do that? Then he goes and looks for that one who got lost in transit. Now, if he moves from pasture to pasture and all 100 get there to the new pasture, he sets up stakes, fences, the barbed wire necessary, or whatever the roping, whatever the fencing would be to keep them corralled together. The sheepdogs, the other shepherds, and the horses around, the sheep, if it's that deep. But once he sets a place for them to stay, the sheep stay together. Now, if a sheep, after it's been set in a place of safety, and you got to remember, their pasture is their home. So they technically get served breakfast in bed because they literally go to sleep on what they eat. Did y'all get that? That was pretty good. You're going to learn that. When you take a flock to pasture, they sleep on the pasture. And the pasture is what they eat. But yet they sleep on it. Can you say breakfast in bed? That was good. That's some Friday fun for y'all. That's good stuff. Okay, anyway. So once you've brought as a shepherd and as a team, the flock completely, all 100, to a place of security, and all 100 are there. If you wake up in the morning and one of the sheep has now gone, they lifted up the latch on the door and they went out, you can look over the land, but in the sense of you going out to find that lamb, within reason, you should. But when it comes to the church, if this is where you've come for fellowship and worship, that human, though the lamb analogy and though the shepherd's what do we call this thing? Analogy, metaphor is applied. You must understand, if we set you up in a safe, secure place and you unlock the door and walk out yourself, you're not a lamb, you a goat. Because the difference in herding goat and herding lamb, same shepherd, they got to put bells around the goats because the goats are rambunctious. They always going off by themselves. But if that lamb, usually when that lamb is with the flock, it stays with the flock and it follows the shepherd. If that shepherd has given them security and pasture and water and safety, and it gets up in the middle of the night and it leaves, it wants to go. You don't go chasing for that. They want to leave. Talking about the church. You go running after them, they're not yours. You don't own them. They are letting you know you're not mine. Let me tell you why you make this. Let me tell you how you make this pure and true. Some of y'all think this is subjective, but Psalms 23, which y'all love to read. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. If your shepherd leads you to safety, you stay there. If your shepherd leads you to food, you stay there. If your shepherd leads you to water, you stay there. If your shepherd leads you to rest, you stay there. You are telling that shepherd, you're my shepherd. If you get up from where they led you to, you are telling them, you're not my shepherd. Pastors, I need y'all to get over your emotions and your feelings about that. They left. They are consciously leaving. They may have been lured out by a wolf in sheep clothing, but they made that their choice. You are not to go running after them. Now you're always looking for them like the prodigal son's father. You always every day go to the point of your best view over the property, looking for when that son or that lamb would come back. And you're always there because they got to make that their own decision. They got to come to their own senses. They got to come to themselves and then come home. But we've been telling the church, oh, if somebody ain't there, you got to go get them. No, you don't. They chose to leave. They know exactly where they came when they signed up with you. They know where they were when they sat down and did that. They made the choice to leave it consciously because they're always telling you how smart they are. Just like your children at home. Right. Once you tell me you grown, let's let you enjoy life that come with being grown. And guess what? It's not tethered to being here with me in my space. Go ahead. Go do it. You got all the equipment, especially when you tell me you're grown. Get up out of, and I ain't got a problem with you coming here hanging out and building stuff. That's no problem. But if you're going to come here and act like you know everything and go contrary to what I have given authority over in this space, time for you to go. Get your own place so you can have authority. So proud of you. Bye. And you pastors got to understand, once a person comes into your congregation, if you are the one that's got to go after and keep them, then they're not trying to be kept. And yes, there are lions. Yes, there are wolves. Yes, there are bears out there. That's their choice. What lamb do you know? I want y'all to tell me right now, if y'all listen to this program, I want some of y'all to tell me right now, what lamb do you know lifts the latch off the lock, the shepherd locked down?
None.
Goats do, don't they?
Yep.
Goats will find a way out. And so you got to be careful because pastors, sometimes we are so busy with the 100 that we hear the bleating of the lamb, which if you're not really keen, you'll also hear the bleating of the goat, which sounds alike. And if you got goat and lamb in the same place, you hear bleating. It all sound. Goats sound like lambs. I'm sorry, they just do. I've been around them. They just sound alike, right? And if you're not really keen to which ones are which, you're just hearing goats. You're hearing them back. But listen to me very closely. Some of y'all got goats and you think they're sheep because they sound like lambs. And then they talking and looking, you're not looking at them, but you're talking to them, and they're really goats. So we always talk about the wolf in sheep's clothing. We never talk about the goat in sheep's clothing. I don't know why we don't do that. I'm just putting it out there. I'm gonna go my way. Y'all didn't think that was funny? I thought that was hilarious. The goat in sheep clothing. Okay, never mind. When we understand what Elohim wants of us, you as pastors, if you've set the house and you know the house is set right, they have the right to choose. Remember, this is why even in though you're on Proceeding Word today, we are overseen by Darash Kingdom Ministries, which is overseen by VWJ Ministries. But in Darash Kingdom Ministries, Darash is a Hebrew word for sought out as a phrase. Sought out Kingdom Ministries, Darash, Hebrew word for sought out as a phrase. And the reason that we are sought out ministries is because we're not going to go advertise for you to come. We're not advertising. We're not putting up billboards. We're not coming up with catchy slogans so that you can get hooked on it and then you can bite on that vibe and then come over and, all these little jingles and all that stuff and trying to let you and giving you pyrotechnic, programming and making sure that we're buying the best vocalists and psalmists and all this stuff like that so you can come, so you can have a great experience in church. No, our only goal is to make sure you're eating and you're having your tools for this warfare you're in called faith, and you have everything you need to be grounded in him. We're not trying to advertise. If you want life, you're leaving all that puff, pomp, circumstance, and fluff, and you're searching for something deeper, something more sustaining, something more tangible, then you'll find a place like this. But you have to seek us out to be here. And just like you left where you were to come here, If you get here and you leave, we gave you a safe environment. We gave you the food you needed. We've given you all that you have need of, and you decide to leave the same way you decided to come. I don't own you, but this is a safe place for you to learn and grow. And if you leave without notification, if you leave without being accountable for where you're going, how long you're going to be going, then clearly we're not where you want to be. And we're not going to fight you for that. That's between you and Elohim. You belong to him, not me. And that's the same thing with your parents in your homes. If they're going to tell you they this, that, and the other, okay, well, you know, I love you. Pastors get hurt when people leave their congregations, man, because we put so much into it, so much into you. Make mistakes, just like a parent does. We make mistakes. We take it for granted. Sometimes we take a person for granted. We may have used the wrong technique to get a message through or to get a subject, you know, addressed. You know, it's still a strategy. We're still trying to orientate. We're still trying to be a coach. We're still trying to raise up, right? And you make mistakes. You use the wrong tool, right? And it could be a bit, you know, shocking and traumatizing at times. But at the end of the day, you're telling when you leave that you're not my pastor. And many of y'all, if you don't catch this, and I'm talking about what I know, you can miss me with that blood is thicker than water thing, because there are certain people who will love you like a father. Better than who's biologically your father. And that's not a knock at anybody. It's just a reality. So until you deem that shepherd your shepherd, David did something so key. He says, Yahweh is my shepherd. You have to tell Yahweh you are my shepherd. Just like when you get to your church, you got to let them know you guys are my covering. If they come to you and say, we're going to be your covering, that's a problem. Until that person says, this is where I want to be. I've listened, I've sat, I've been here for a while. This is my home. You guys are going to be my covering and you're my shepherds here, right? Yahweh is your shepherd, but the under shepherds, you are where we're learning from. We've never learned like this. We're here. You have to make that statement yourself. If anybody comes to you and says, you know, typically, like we say, I'm just having fun, but it's true in what I'm saying. The doors of the church are open. You know, come on, you should come. If you don't have a church home, come here, get with us and all that. All that is necessary. Admonish that someone should be in a tribe, should be in a community, should be in a fellowship. But to use tactics to lure you in, implore you in, and all that is unnecessary. That person has to be resolved in their choice and saying, you know what, this is a solid place for me. I'm growing differently. I'm learning better. At least I believe I am. And this is my home. You have to be able to say, this is my shepherd. And here I'm finding I won't want anything that I do have need of. And what I think I can want, I find they have enough to meet me at that level. So for you pastors, if you're constantly going after the flock, then you're not doing the job of the Father. You're constantly running after somebody who came in, told you they loved you, and then they left. Yeah, that's not going to work. Your church door is a revolving door. Everybody who comes in it has to choose to be there. And though they come in, you as a pastor, if you're doing your job for real, you're not trying to get numbers, you're not trying to get likes, you're not trying to get mega status. You are there to make sure whoever comes through that turnstile, whoever comes through that door, whoever crosses that threshold, they can be nourished, refreshed, retooled. Iron can sharpen iron. You can help develop. They can develop you. All of this is a part of the fellowship. And this is the truth on raising children. Naturally and in church, kingdom style. I know we've been hit with church style, religious style, but the kingdom style, that's more what it looks like. I hope that you guys have been edified. If there's a question on the platform anywhere, let me know now, as we're going to be letting you guys go, because Sabbath is about to come on me not long from now, and I need to get into it, get ready for it. Those of you who are in Sabbath studies, I'm hoping that you guys are being edified by the teachings. And remember, you know, the kingdom life is different, unfortunately, than a lot of what we do within the church that propagates kingdom. And it's not a shot or a knock. It's just a reality that we gotta start owning, so we can literally bring the kingdom into our churches, into our organizations, into our gatherings, creating fellows in the same ship, using the edict from the owner of that vessel, navigating us on an earth that he also owns and created. Fellows in his ship, fellowship, citizens of his kingdom. Let's become that. Man does not live by bread alone. Man lives by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh, who is our Elohim. If you want to go back and view this on Clubhouse and or on Facebook or YouTube, it will be posted in the archives. Prayerfully, you guys will find something. If you got a question, hit me up with it on whatever platform you're on. I'll make sure I get back to you and provide you biblical answers for what it is that you need to consider from the writ, from the Torah, and whatever other verses that are supported throughout the entirety of the Bible, so that you can see it for yourself, read it for yourself, study it with whoever you want to study it with, but make sure that you have the word of Elohim as much information on that subject as we can get you. All right. So it's been a joy and a pleasure for me to be with you guys. I just hope you guys are growing in grace. And again, if you don't have a church home, contact Darash Kingdom Ministries. Of course, it's me and those that are with us. And if you're enjoying what you're learning and you want to learn more, we're more than willing to sit and study with you. And we don't force you anything. You make that decision. You make that choice. All right. Whatever choice you make, we're just going to be here to make sure you get the word. All right. If you want to stay in that certain house, don't matter to me. As long as you're trying to persevere to get to hear the Father say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Well, hopefully you guys will support this ministry and help us to stay effective and relevant on the platforms. You can go to vwministries.com and do that if you'd so like to do. Again, we don't bother you, badger you about anything on that regard. But we do hope that you will go and consider being a blessing as we look to be a blessing and a nutrient in your kingdom lifestyle. Remembering, what is a responsibility to raising those that Elohim has given you responsibility for on the earth? Did he really leave the 99 and go to get the one? Well, we did discuss that, and I hope and pray that you've been blessed and edified by it. Have a great day. This is yours truly, Apostle VW.
Place for you, don't need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word itself approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences, let love heal all that's broken.